it's an anniversary no parent wants. April 14th marks 2 years since 276 girls were abducted from their dorm rooms in northeastern Nigeria. More than 50 managed to escape, but 219 remain missing. So what's become of the Chibok girls? Our digital producer Dan Ming has been following this story since it broke. It's something that we've covered continuously here at the stream. So what are you seeing today?
So for the last 2 years, we've had a lot of Nigerians tweet us regularly about the Bring Back Our Girls campaign. And on the second anniversary, here's what a few of them had to say.
It's been almost 2 years.
There's been a deficit of empathy in the world, most especially in our own context.
The Chibok girls might be the most popular of the abducted girls, but they were not the only people that have been abducted from the northeast.
We are not giving up. That's why we've been standing. We've been coming out daily for almost 2 years.
The Bring Back Our Girls group remains a conscience that our Chibok girls cannot and will never be forgotten.
There's a glimpse of hope, despite the fact that everything that is happening is tragic.
We know that our girls will be back. We know we will put a closure to this.
The world is standing with us today with our Chibok girls because we haven't moved on. We have kept the story alive.
For 2 years now, the search has been on for the Chibok girls. False leads have raised hope along the way, but their whereabouts remain unknown. A new video has emerged showing some of them offering hope that they are still alive. Over the past year, the Nigerian military says it has made significant inroads in the battle against Boko Haram, rescuing other captives of the group. The government says it has technically defeated them, but critics say they continue to attack civilians, and the government hasn't done enough. A UNICEF report released this week documents how Boko Haram has used children as suicide bombers. It found that Boko Haram used a child in nearly 1 out of every 5 suicide attacks last year. More than 2/3 of those children were girls. The girls' kidnapping has become a political issue. For their family and friends, there's anger and frustration over the lack of answers from Nigerian leadership. Their movement continues on the streets and online under the hashtag #BringBackOurGirls. So today we'll delve into the possible fate of the Chibok girls. And to help us do that, with us on set is Omulola Adile Osho. She's the executive director of ACT for Accountability. In Abuja, Nigeria, Buki Shonabare is a strategic team member of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign and runs an NGO that works with young girls in northeastern Nigeria. In Germany, Mojubaulu Okome is a professor of political science at Brooklyn College at the City University of New York and senior visiting fellow at the Max Planck Institute. And in Lagos, Nigeria, Aisha Mohammed Oyebode is founder of the Murtala Muhammad Foundation and author of the forthcoming book, The Daughters of Chibok. Welcome, everyone, to the stream. Buki, I want to start with you. You've been on the show before. You've been campaigning for the return of these girls from the start. I want to show our audience something on my laptop here. This is a tweet you sent out just a few hours ago. 2 years of abduction, hashtag Bring Back Our Girls. There's you standing with that as you have every day now. So 2 years on, how did you mark this anniversary?
This morning, we marched to the presidential villa here in Abuja. Before then, I was on a program on a local TV here in Nigeria. And after that, we had that march, and we went to the presidential villa with a view to reading out a statement that we had prepared to remind the world yet again that the Chibok girls are missing. And afterwards, after that particular event, we marched back to the Unity Fountain where we meet on a daily basis. And we had our debriefing session, and I was quite a bit too emotional today, tired emotionally and psychologically, and you know, I just had to come back home. But for me, it's a sad reality that this day had to come for us to commemorate 2 years since the abduction of the Chibok girls.
Dan, she says tired emotionally. I mean, I can hear the emotion in Buki's voice there. I know people online are saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, and people are frankly confused about what the status is of these girls. And Lola, I'd like to show you this video comment we got from Medinat in Switzerland and have you respond. Take a listen.
Sure.
With Operation Safe Corridor and all the people that have been rescued from the throes of Boko Haram, not one single trace has been found of the girls. Should we believe Abubakar Shekau when he said he has sold them to slavery? Or should we believe activists that say they are being guarded? Or is it that the government and the military know something that we don't know?
So Lola, how do we know who to trust? How do we know what's actually going on with so many conflicting sources?
Unfortunately, that's not new with Nigeria. Like I say, sometimes truth is optional. But what we do know is there was a recent New York Times article that came out, I believe, April 7th, where it chronicles the story of one woman who escaped, and that was a recent escape. And in it, she says that she sees some girls in the camp where she was being held, and they told her that they were part of the schoolgirls kidnapped from Chibok. So that's evidence that some of them at least are still alive and are still in Nigeria. Now, how many of them? There weren't enough details, but you would think that with having one person who escaped, who can give some information, that this is a person that the Nigerian government, at least the security forces, should be debriefing to figure out how they can use the information she has, what she learned, to be able to have some kind of counter-insurgency plan.
And this is the very article that Lola just mentioned, the New York Times. Boko Haram turns female captives into terrorists. This is Dateline April 7. This is the one you mentioned. So, Moju Baulu, we see this, and as we mentioned at the very top of the show, there was also the news that broke on Wednesday of a video that had surfaced. It was purportedly from December, but might be the first sign of hope that some of these families have gotten, that their daughters were at least alive in December. What do we know about the whereabouts of these girls?
I think that's the million-dollar question that nobody, at least not in a totally verifiable way, can say that it's public knowledge where the girls are. However, I think that even very early on, after the abduction, there was a young woman who escaped. I think it was about 4 months into the abduction, and she was already pregnant. She also could have been debriefed. There were other people along the way who spoke about the Chibok girls. And you know, what I find curious is that most of the interviews were done by either Human Rights Watch or news organizations. And I don't know the extent to which Nigerian government has tried to gather and synthesize the information from these sources. I actually am very hopeful because I believe that hope is the only option we have, and we have to dare to be bold in our dream that these tender young women would be rescued and reunited with their families. And as I say this, we also know there are thousands of women and children, girls and young boys who have been abducted by Boko Haram. I think the tragedy for me is that Nigerian authorities don't have a figure for us to say this is how many. We do not have a checklist of names so that, you know, once somebody is recovered, we can check that off and say, okay, this is how many we're still looking for. So somebody told me that yesterday the government has now agreed that there will be this directory of missing persons. I think that is that's wonderful news, but it's, you know, a lot of what is being done for me is too little. This problem is massive.
Right.
There needs to be real serious thinking about what to do, not only in terms of rescuing our girls, which I am not shaking in my faith that it would happen, but also taking care of the people who already have been rescued or self-rescued.
So, Mojibolo, you mentioned something
hard
there that I want to pick up on. You said, somebody told me, and that sounds like a lot of the way that a lot of this information is coming out. It's kind of hearsay. There's nothing official. Yeah. So I'm wondering, Aisha, I want to bring you in here, what the families know, what people are telling them. I know that you and your team, in working on this upcoming book that we mentioned, you've talked to about 200 relatives of these girls. What stories did they tell you?
Well, before the video that was released yesterday came out, they also had heard a lot of stories. They call me a lot of the time to talk about sightings in different parts of the Northeast, as well as, most importantly, around the border towns. And there have been one sighting that was actually seemed particularly, it appeared, at that time to seem, because of the timeline that was given, it seemed quite real, which was that the girls were seen and they were being moved to a different country, and they were talking about the fact that they were Chibok girls, and the person who came and reported said they spoke in Chibok, which is quite a distinct language of that part of the Northeast. But even then, there was none of those stories that could be verified, except, of course, when the video was released yesterday. Definitely yesterday, that video that was released has 15 of the missing Chibok girls. They were shown on that video. More importantly, there were 3 mothers there, and 2 of them actually identified their daughters and said that those were their daughters in the video. And when the girls gave out the names, because the names were not that coherent as they were being read out, we were also asked to verify based on the lists that we had produced and worked on with the families, and we could clearly identify 8 out of those 15 girls, that those were the names of the Chibok girls, yes.
So Aisha, as Mojibolo mentioned, there are many others who have been abducted as well that people aren't necessarily talking about online. I want to read this tweet and ask you about it, Buki. Joseph wrote in, he said, the downside of the Chibok Girls campaign is that it takes away commendation from other abducted people that haven't been rescued so far. So Buki, what do you think about that? Do you think that there hasn't been enough attention on the estimated 2,000 other people who have been abducted?
I tend to understand why people would think in that direction, because when you hear Bring Back Our Girls, it is synonymous to the Chibok girls. And particularly the fact that when we do campaign, it's more about the Chibok girls. But what sometimes people fail to hear or understand is that the Chibok girls has become a symbol of every other abductee. When the girls were abducted,
I actually agree with Buki that our girls we use them as a touchstone to indicate that these were the largest number of kids that were abducted at one time. And the work that Buki is doing in the camps, in the IDP camps, she's working with some of the people that have already been rescued. She's working with people who were displaced from their homes. We have 2.3 million people displaced, and majority of them are not in camps. The camps that we have are full to capacity, and conditions there are very dreadful. So they are Bring Back Our, and I also know that Aisha and the Muritala Mohammed Foundation are working with some of the internally displaced people as well. So I think that when people reduce what we do to a hashtag, it's unfortunate, because it's more than a hashtag. We do the hashtag, we do the street level action, we do advocacy with government, with international agencies. Omolola is doing work with Congress in the United States.
So Mojibala, I'm glad that you mentioned her, and I'm glad that you raised that.
Are doing so much work.
This is more than a hashtag, Lola. Do you agree with that?
It is. Okay. It started as a hashtag, but it's an ideology. It's an ideology that girls everywhere, women everywhere, should not be commodity and should not be casualties of conflict. And that's what it is. But it's also reflective that for once we have a place, Africans who have felt their voices repressed have a place to be able to say, we will not keep quiet anymore. And it's grown. The use of the hashtag has grown into a way of building a global community. I met these ladies because of this work. And it's grown into a sisterhood, friendships that we have each other's backs. And I don't think people understand the power of understanding that no matter where you are in the world, there are people that you can reach out to that have this belief that connects everyone. But we have this strong philosophy and ideology of making sure, of wanting not only girls, women, but every single person, no matter where they are in the world, for this to never happen.
Well, Lola, I wonder then if any of that and what you mentioned has led to concrete action. I want to show all of our guests something on my laptop here. This is from the Office of the Vice President, Nigeria. This is a headline. This was put out on the anniversary. President Buhari raises Chibok girls' rescue at every Security Council meeting. Buki, do you think that there is enough being done on the part of the government, President Buhari and his administration?
I was actually at the roundtable dialogue where the vice president made that statement yesterday, and Aisha Oyebode was also there as well. It's just unfortunate that result has not been seen regarding the Chibok girls. If we say the government is not doing enough, we would be putting to waste every effort that has been put into rescuing every other abductees. Unfortunately, the Chibok girls are not back. And for us, we have defined success in counterinsurgency to be one of the critical success factors is the return of the Chibok girls. But that the Chibok girls have not been brought back will be also slapping the military men who have been on the front line, who have lost their lives, fighting this war, rescuing several abductees, waging war against the insurgents. So while result has not been seen regarding the Chibok girls, I would not say the government is not doing enough. Counterinsurgency in Nigeria has really improved. Okay. So
can I add a little bit?
Put that
Lola, you sparked a little something. Aisha wants to get in. Sorry, Buki, you sparked something. Lola wants to get in. Aisha wants to get in. Aisha, we haven't heard from you in a while. Go ahead.
I would also like to add, yes, that the importance, the symbolism has now gone beyond the just the Chibok girls. One of the things that has come out is the issue of safety and security in our schools. And about a month ago, here in Lagos, 3 girls were actually abducted from their school, and very quickly, the state government stepped in, the security forces stepped in, and those girls were actually rescued. And I think it's what Buki is saying. We need to understand that because we use them as a symbol, and also Funke had mentioned that, is allowing us also to develop protocols, to develop systems that would ensure that we keep our daughters safe in school, we keep our children safe in school, and more importantly, the responsibility of the security forces to the children and to the nation itself. And also, and you see, the symbolism is important because up until the Chibok girls went missing, we didn't know the numbers of the girls who had gone missing. They were faceless and they were nameless. But in the case of the Chibok girls, we had a comprehensive list of names, and we had started putting faces to the names. And I think that
I'm glad that you raised that. This is the page that I want to bring up. This was that striking image we all saw. I hear you not thinking the government is doing enough, Mojibolu, but I want to show something because Aisha brought up this, that these are not faceless, nameless girls. This is the Facebook page for the Bring Back Our Girls, and this is what first caught the attention of the world, really. You saw these faces, you saw the names of these girls, and that helped spark this movement that we then saw online, Dan.
And there's also a lot of debate about whether the government should negotiate with Boko Haram and how, if so, how they should negotiate. And we have people who tweeted us here. Tha wrote, "You can't bomb them today and negotiate tomorrow. Choose one." Suleiman said, "If there's evidence that the sects will negotiate, I will support President Buhari." Lola, I wanted to ask you this. So one thing that President Buhari said is that he's open to negotiations with Boko Haram about the release of these abducted girls, but he hasn't been able to find a credible interlocutor, like a go-between. How would the government go about doing that?
I'll be honest, I don't believe that's true. And I'm just going to say that. I have a little bit of sentiment with Buki on that the government hasn't done enough. And I also commend the Nigerian peacekeeping security forces because they are doing a lot with very little resources. So we cannot forget that there are people out there who are fighting to make sure that Boko Haram is fought, but also that the girls, they can rescue as many people as they can. But to your question, it is, unfortunately, we had reports earlier on that the previous administration was in negotiations with representatives of Boko Haram sect. Now, we talk about Boko Haram as an entity, one thing. They're not all in one place. So it's a matter of figuring out who's a spokesperson for this entity. Is this the right person? And I strongly believe if the government wants to find a representation, I'm sure they have ways and channels. I mean, if Boko Haram can communicate to us through Twitter, then maybe the president of Nigeria should do the same and put an open public statement out there that we want to have conversations and then see who shows up and then vet them to see who's more credible. So to say that we can't find a representative to talk to, I don't buy that and I don't accept that.
Mojibolu?
Well, you know, I think also we have to remember that there's a history to all this, that when those negotiations were said to be done before, they failed. And I think from what I heard the Minister for Information saying yesterday after the Proof of Life video was shown on CNN, he says there's been a lot of information that they followed up and came to nothing. I think this is a normal part of any decent investigation. But I do think, I said that the government is not doing enough. It's not because I don't take seriously President Buhari's pledge that they're going to rescue our girls and prioritize it, and that he's going to bring the fight to Boko Haram and defeat them. I believe all that. But then also, the security of our people, all of them, the ones in the camps, the ones that are still in the towns and villages that Boko Haram is sweeping in and still kidnapping people and doing suicide bombing, and the IDP camps.
Mojibolu, I want to pause you there because I think that's a good point. Mojibolu, I think that's actually a good point. I'm glad you brought it back to the people that are in IDP camps, the ones who are in Chibok. Aisha, I just want to end briefly on something that you sent our team. These are some pictures of people you talked to. Can you describe the story behind this picture I'm showing here of a beautiful woman? Her picture is being held. Who is she?
Okay, that's Deborah. And her father is Lawan, and you know, she is, I'm trying to recall what age she is because we didn't have some of the parents were not able to.
Aisha, I'm gonna pause you there. We'll get more on that story in the post show. Of course, you can also see this, the stories that Aisha's mentioning and the Daughters of Chibok. That is an upcoming book, and there's a website here. We'll tweet it out with more of these pictures and these stories. We're not done yet. There's lots more to cover. I'm taking all of our guests to the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. But Dan, I know there's so much online about this.
That's right, and there's one thing we wanted to to leave everybody with. Saleh was at a rally in Abuja today, and he sent us this video. We'd like to leave you with this.
What are we demanding? Bring back our girls now and alive. What are we demanding? Bring back our girls now and alive. What are we asking for? The truth, nothing but the truth. So you are rich forever. So
Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation around the 2-year anniversary of the kidnapping of the Chibok girls. Dan, I love that video that we played. It's so powerful. A young girl dressed in red, of course, out there. I can see this is emotional for you.
It is.
What do you feel when you see that?
I just never thought we would be here 2 years later. I just never thought we would be here 2 years later talking about this. But to see that little girl shouting for her sisters who are still missing, it warms my heart. So these are mixed tears. It's not just tears of despair, but it's tears that, wow, you know what? We have the next generation right there.
Yeah.
Who understands that the importance of her agency. And that to me that's what this is about. It's about knowing that 2 years into it, we have woken up as a people. And we are not going to stay silent anymore until these girls, until every single person that has been abducted by Boko Haram is home safe and sound with their families.
You know, what I've noticed is, of course, I don't think she's alone. I don't think you're alone. You can see around our studio today and just in some of the panels, these are pictures of the protests that happened on this anniversary. You see ribbons on some of the trees. This was in Abuja. You see signs there. And of course, if you check out the hashtag, we're also tweeting them out, hashtag AJStream, you can see more of those pictures. You know, tears is appropriate for this anniversary. Aisha, you were telling us about the story of some of the families. I'm pulling up a picture here. I believe this is a relative, a mother of one of those girls, and she's also crying. Can you tell us her story?
Okay, that is Rejoice's mother. Rejoice is her mother's name is Mary, and her father's name is Malum Sankey. And some of the things that they tell us, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, it's important to document these stories also for the next generation, is so that we can hear what the mothers have to say about their daughters. Mary remembers that her daughter has a beautiful voice, which she used to, when she used to hear her sing Christian songs, and when she thinks of the music she used to sing, she can still hear, you know, her voice in her head. You know, the earlier girl I talked about, Deborah, is the third of 5 children.
That's the picture I pulled up on my screen here.
Yes, the earlier one. And one of the things that her mother remembers clearly is that Deborah was very hardworking. She helped with the meals, she did the laundry. In summary, one of the things that we noticed was a thread with all of these girls was that because the families are actually very poor and they are having to, you know, put together resources to educate, you know, they are not able to educate all of their daughters. You found that usually the one that was in school was the one who was exceptional, either academically or was very hardworking. And usually you find that those are the children that, you know, tended to help the parents around the house, and also help the family in, financially, either through doing chores for other families, plaiting hair, going to the farm. You know, those are the kind of things that we noticed in the stories, yes.
So Aisha, speaking of the next generation, I wanted to just mention this UN report that just came out again. It said over 670,000 children in the region, which includes Cameroon, Chad, and Niger, are out of school currently because of the conflict. Buki, how can the government and the governments of the neighboring countries get these kids back to school?
I think we need, the first thing is for the government itself to understand the nexus between education and national development. until we get to that point where we change our mindset about what education really means, then we would not prioritize education the way it should be. Unfortunately, there are several young people out of school. A lot of the camps that I work with, there are several children out of school. And you go to these communities, and we work in 5 of the 6 northeastern states, and it practically breaks you when you see children who just sleep and wake up. Children should go to school, you know. So I think that first we need to understand and prioritize. Understand and
yes, you know, one of the things that I think is atrocious, you know, when I said that the government wasn't doing enough, I don't want to restrict myself just to fighting Boko Haram, which I think this administration is doing more effectively and in a more encouraging way than the old administration. But there are over 10 million children out of school in Nigeria. I think it's a crisis. You know, so this insurgency has made it open to the world that we have a problem with Nigeria saying that it is signed on to the Education for All initiative that the UNESCO has, and then not really making it possible for so many children to be educated. I think it's a disgrace. I think also that education is as important as the way we think about national security. That the only way that you are going to lift so many people out of poverty and give them hope for a better tomorrow and also make them good citizens in a functioning democracy is to educate them. So the kind of education that I have for my kids is what I want for all the kids in Nigeria. And I did go to school in Nigeria. I think we have to make this educational opportunities open to all our children. And then Nigeria's education
can I add something in here?
Mojibolu, there's some agreement. I hear Aisha saying she agrees. Lola also wants to add something.
Can I also add that, you know, unfortunately, the report that Auntie Funke is talking about is that Nigeria has the largest number of out-of-school children in the world. 10.5 million children in Nigeria have been out of school. That's atrocious. But I also want to say that while the government has fallen short, there are NGOs on the ground that are doing work, and Buki's organization is one of them. They have a program that is a school in a bag program, and in fact our organization just did a fundraiser yesterday to support this program, where they're providing textbooks, workbooks, supplies for kids in camps so that education stays a priority in these camps, but also to make sure that they have some sort of a classroom setting. They also have something called a learning tent, where they will actually provide tables, chairs, you know, a classroom environment. It's not just about the books, but making sure that the whole concept of education, be it traditional education for now until there's the access to schools and exactly. What we can do is, if the government, and I hate, even though the government has a responsibility to make sure that quality access to education is available and affordable for all children, in the meantime, there are organizations that are doing great work that need the support, and they fill the gap where the government isn't meeting their responsibility.